Okay, today is mostly going to be story time because recently I had a sort of awakening regarding loot boxes that has led me to a newfound understanding of the concept in a much more precise way. For anyone who watches the content, you already know I have very firm beliefs regarding monetization, and I advocate for consumer rights very actively. The thing is, even while fully understanding the concept of loot boxes and having in-depth knowledge of their intentional psychologically manipulative design, I did not have first-hand experience with the effects from a personal standpoint. That has now changed, and I would like to share the story of how that happened, as well as examine a series of preventative measures that would help solve the issue and lead to a better monetization standard within the industry. The focus for the majority of this video will be on Path of Exile, but I would like to establish before diving in that I greatly enjoy Path of Exile, I support the developers, and I wish nothing but continued success for the title. That being said, this was the game that opened my eyes to just how detrimental loot boxes truly are and can be. I always knew conceptually, but Path of Exile showed me in a whole new light. Now for the story. So, Path of Exile is a free-to-play game that sells stash capacity and cosmetic microtransactions. It isn't pay to win, the cosmetics look fantastic, they are a bit overpriced, I've had that complaint for a long while now, but I enjoy them and I spend money, knowing that every few months I will have a new league, new mechanics, and new content to play around with. Path of Exile also sells loot boxes, however, and up until recently I had never bought any. One day I logged into the game and right in front of me was another player whose character looked really cool. Now, I had some points in my account and I figured I already have the points, I want to look like that too, I wonder what he used, maybe I'll buy the pieces that he is using. I whispered to him, asked what the effects were, and he replied with a few things I actually already had, and then said the weapon effects, which were called the Wrangler cosmetics. This is where I got confused because in the past I had never really interacted with the loot boxes, which cycle in and out of the store with different rewards each time. So when I searched the typical items for Wrangler, it didn't show up. And I asked him if they were legacy items, because that is possible. Legacy items pop up, they disappear, they're gone, they're from certain supporter packs, whatever, and you can't get them. He said, no, they are in the current loot boxes. At this moment, I got kind of sad. I didn't want to buy RNG-based loot boxes. I knew the chances were low to get what I wanted. You can't actually sell back cosmetics in Path of Exile or trade them in. You can craft duplicates sometimes into a slightly different version, but that's pretty much it. And the end result was that I might pay a lot of money for a bunch of things I don't want and never get the thing that I did. But in the end, I figured, why the hell not? I have the points, I'm going to spend them anyways at some point down the line. Why not now? And maybe get this really cool thing that I want. It's kind of stupid, but for some reason I really liked the Wrangler effect for the weapons, so I bought in. I bought 3, then 5, then 10, then 15, and so on until at about 30 or 40 packs, maybe more, I had run out of points, and surprise, surprise, no Wrangler effect. Here is where the downward slide began. Now, let's get one thing straight before going any further. This is not a claim that, woe is me, I spent too much on loot boxes. I am 25 years old, I am 100% responsible for my own actions. I knew what I was doing, and I am not suffering because of this in any way. It was merely an educational experience, but it helped me gain a deeper understanding of how bad loot boxes can actually be. Back to the story. I was out of points, I didn't have what I wanted, so I figured, why not a few more? I'm bound to get the weapon effect eventually, next one could be it. I bought a few more points, no Wrangler effect. I bought more points, no Wrangler effect. I bought even more points and still no Wrangler weapon effect, and suddenly I realized something. I had spent over $240 worth of points in rapid succession without even thinking about it, and I still didn't even have the thing that I wanted. Now, to be fair, more than half of that amount was points that I already had from past leagues and had been saving, which still kind of sucks, but whatever. And I also had the ability to inwardly reflect on what was happening before going off the deep end and spending 2 or 3 times that without thinking. But the realization hit me that for a similar amount of money, I could have done so many different things. Something people may not know about me, I collect watches, artistic ones, interesting ones. Basically any watch that seems cool, I want it for myself, it's a hobby of mine. And for that amount of money, I could have gotten a very interesting watch and had it for the next, I don't know, many years and known exactly what I was getting for what exact price. To connect back to gaming, I could have bought 10 or 20 indie games worth hundreds of hours of entertainment, but instead I spent it on randomized chances to get something visually appealing and didn't even actually get the item. This experience truly opened my eyes because in a lot of circumstances, some gamers are unable to have that moment of clarity and stop spending. Children that play these games might not necessarily think about it with the same fiscally responsible approach, and the end result is that even cosmetic-only loot boxes in a free-to-play game can be supremely damaging. Here's where I have to go a little deeper, however. The woe is me, think of the children argument is really annoying, because a certain degree of responsibility does rest with the parents. If a game is rated mature 18 plus and a parent buys it for their 12-year-old, the 12-year-old then learns a bunch of curse words and says them at school, and the parent tries to blame the game, well, no, they are an idiot and a shitty parent. But when a game is free to play for all ages while also containing loot boxes, there is an issue. Right now, in the United States, there is an anti-loot box and pay-to-win microtransaction bill making its way through Congress. I am nervous about this. Their definition of pay-to-win is broad. It may lead to unexpected side effects, and it's unclear how a lot of the committee decisions as to what game fits what vague definition will be decided. But even with all of that considered, and my deeply ingrained skepticism of government influence in any topic whatsoever, not just gaming, it's a bit more clear to me now, on a personal level, what is actually going on. Path of Exile has one unique thing going for it right now. There is a well-documented case where a gamer internally realized that they had become hooked on loot boxes and contacted the developers, Grinding Gear Games. The response was to disable the loot boxes entirely client-side for an agreed-upon period of time so that this player could still enjoy the game, still participate as normal, but not be tempted to buy any more boxes. This is an effective solution and immediately proves that client-side modifications are possible. While the developers do make the conscious choice to feature randomized loot boxes, at least they can be disabled in such a way as to protect those truly vulnerable to the mechanic. But only a small percentage of players will ever reach the point of self-awareness required to actually reach out and initiate that solution, especially considering it is a solution that is unadvertised and not well known. The problem of lootbox influence and effect stretches even deeper, however. Without rehashing the tired old arguments that have already been covered time and time again, such as how they are considered gambling and thus face regulation in numerous European countries and the United States as well, we can look to the Middle East, where a game like PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds has been facing severe controversy, even receiving an outright ban in Jordan. At first, a lot of gaming media covered this occurrence as if it was entirely focused on violence within the game, and while that may in fact be a notable consideration, the full scope of motivation behind banning the game stretches much further. Within Arab News, we can see an article covering the event which explains towards the bottom the added concern of loot boxes. Games such as Fortnite, Apex Legends, and PUBG are all advertised as free to play. However, they provide players with the opportunity to pay real money for in-game cosmetic items, leading many in Saudi Arabia to urge the banning of the games as they are seen to encourage gambling. Microtransactions in video games are real money purchases a player makes within a game either to progress or to improve the player experience, for example, by gaining new equipment or abilities. Despite the name, these purchases can range in price from a few cents to $100 or more. Lucky players who get a valuable loot box prize often share their good fortune over social media, which is a form of free advertising for the game that encourages other players to pay money and try their luck. But the use of loot boxes is controversial, with complaints from gamers and the media that they offer wealthier players an unfair advantage and could lead to addiction. Jordan is primarily a Muslim population, about 95% following a Sunni Islam belief set according to recent census polls. Within Islamic belief, gambling is considered haram, or forbidden. It is a sin that is deeply reviled, and thus banning a game in a country in which it contains mechanics widely regarded as sinful, it starts to make a little more sense. The prevailing narrative is that violence in the game is the primary factor behind its ban, and that may even in fact be true, but the issue of loot box gambling extends so far beyond the scope of any previous video game monetization system. It intersects with problems such as addiction, it even intersects with religious doctrine, and worldwide regulatory framework has not, as of yet, been able to keep up, since the games industry and the various publishers behind the practice adapt far quicker than sluggishly advancing legislative bodies. Recently, a story has made the rounds regarding a situation where children were able to empty their parents' bank account while buying loot boxes in FIFA Ultimate Team. What makes the whole situation worse is that even while emptying their family's savings, they still did not even receive their favorite players, because the system we know as loot boxes, advertised as surprise mechanics by snake oil salesmen on behalf of EA, are designed from the ground up to extract the highest possible toll for user enjoyment. Here is where we get into the topic of possible solutions. I disagree with banning games entirely based on religious disagreements that pertain to specific elements within those games, but the idea of a client-side toggle, or region toggle even, is one that could be expanded upon to wonderful effect. I might catch some flack for this, I'm not sure, but a large amount of responsibility does rest with the parents. What these large publishers argue in defense of loot boxes is fundamentally true if, and that's a big if, they provide solutions and prevention measures comprehensive enough to solve the problems and simple enough to be explained and utilized by parents without having to be intricately researching or monitoring the activity of gaming for their child. Loot boxes are gambling, there is no way around it, and in a 21 plus game, I believe they should be allowed to exist. I still don't like them, they fucking suck, they're terrible, and they make the experience of getting what you want a million times harder than it needs to be, but the freedom for them to exist within the legal age bracket in which they are legitimately allowed, I can't really dispute that. However, for any game that is technically legally allowed to be sold to a player under the age of 21, loot boxes cannot exist. Here's where we start to see a spiderweb of ramifications, however. A game like Hearthstone, which is absolutely based around the concept of loot boxes with its card packs, has a huge chunk of under 21 players that support its economy. Hearthstone also has a leg up over other perpetrators of the concept by allowing a crafting mechanic wherein cards gained, when duplicates that is, can be deconstructed so eventually, instead of being wholly based upon random draw chances, a player can just craft the card that they want, but even with this improvement, it is not enough. My proposed solution to the loot box issue is that the concept can be allowed to exist in 21 plus games, but with the full understanding that children often play video games well above their current age bracket, it would need to have a full and comprehensive client-side toggle system for parents to disable loot boxes from being sold in the store entirely to their children. The intricacies of how to construct this system, with password protection, set time spans, who knows, whatever it is, would need to be hashed out. But placing the ability to fully lock down the loot box option entirely in the hands of the parents is a good start. A second change I would propose, in some form or another, this is an extremely rough concept at the moment, keep that in mind, is the implementation of a crafting system at 1-to-1, or at the very least 1 to 0.5. What I mean by this is that for every card pack you buy and every single individual card you obtain, you could deconstruct it and craft a separate card entirely if you wanted to on a 1-to-1 basis. One card deconstructs the components, gives you one different card. The effect of a system like this would be that while you are indeed buying random cards at first, you could even transform them into the things you actually wanted after the purchase with no value lost, or worst case scenario with some value lost but at a set ratio. The reason I propose this change is because it would put companies like EA on the back foot. A set ratio crafting system would allow players to participate in the surprise mechanics and get the rush of unexpected things, but without the risk of not getting what they actually wanted, because they could then transform what they did acquire into what they are seeking. Maybe they got something unexpected they want to keep, or maybe they didn't, but they can then still get what they truly desired either way because it doesn't matter. You have the proposed positive of Kinder Egg mechanics, which EA pretends is the focus, while not creating a black hole of infinite spending with no guarantee of a payoff. It's a complicated subject, and almost any solution is imperfect, but for me, with my recent personal experience wherein I glimpsed the rapid evolution that can take place when someone really wants an object barred behind the loot box concept, it was eye-opening because so many games possess this mechanic, and conceptually it's easy to think, oh yeah, they are bad, but when you have truly experienced a taste of it firsthand, it gets a whole lot clearer. That's it though. If you want to support, check out the links down below. We have memberships, merch, etc., but I'll cut it there and stop rambling. That's enough. As always, thank you all for watching, and have a nice night.